Quiet. All right. Okay, I'm going to try something different. It's a little, somebody told me to stay on the script and talk about something you know. So that's trouble. But so I'm going to try. They came out with a thing the other day. They said humor. They figured out it might be good for you in the hospital. A little humor. So I was thinking back to 40 years of being a nurse, and I thought, yeah, there were some high points there. So I'd like to share some of those with you. I won't get too. Anyway, what I always say about the nurses is they all got really good stories. They just can't tell them. That's the problem. But since I'm leaving tomorrow, I got a few. So, where's our man with the dog? The guy that his dog loves him. Anyway, he's right here. He was talking about that point where you have this, where you realize what's going on, and you have this epiphany. So, I had seen that movie, Going Around the World in 80 Days. I was a young kid with an imagination, so I thought, well, how about go around the world with $80? So I gave it a shot. It didn't work out too good. And I realized that when I was in Lisbon, Portugal, selling blood, $60 a pint. So I thought, this isn't going too good. I better do something a little different. And after selling a few pints and running out of blood, watching the Woody Allen movie in Portuguese for 3 days because I couldn't get out of the theater, I thought, I better get an education. So somehow I ended up in Billings, in nursing school in Billings, Montana, in 1970. So the nuns, they were all nuns back then in St. Vincent's. Anyway, I was scared to death of nuns. After the school I went to in New York with Sisters of No Mercy and unlimited ammunition. Actually the nuns in Billings were fun. They were fun. It was these real serious nurses that were there, all starched up. And Mrs. Koch, my first instructor, she let me know she didn't think males would make good nurses. So I appreciated that right off the bat. And I thought this is going to be fun. So anyway, first day in class, she says, Mr. McCann, your patient has a Bezor. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she says, do you know what that is? I said, no, but from the sounds of it, I shouldn't miss it, whatever it is. She didn't think that was funny. But anyway, by the end of the day, I knew what a Bezor was. Anybody know what a Bezor is? Okay, good, don't tell them. So I go and get the x-ray, and I said, oh, wow, now I know what a Bezor is, So when we had the powwow at the end of the day, I said, she said, Mr. McCann, what did you learn about Bezors today? And I said, well, I learned that why they call them Bezors. And I said, after looking at the x-ray, if you pass that thing, you're going to be sore for sure. Anyway, that didn't go over too good. But anyway, and that's a true story. You can't make that up. Where I got in trouble was in Billings, real close to the Crow Reservation and the Lame Deer Cheyenne Reservation. And if somebody's really in bad shape, they don't think they should be alone. So I would sneak up. I think I had 38 crows in a room one time. And you're only supposed to have 2 guests, so that was trouble. Anyway, that happened a couple times. And anyway, luckily, I thought, I'm never going to be a nurse. I'm not going to make it. They're going to kill me off, these nurses. So they transferred me to Butte. You can find the Butte section here. Anyway, so Butte, yeah, that's another world. But so I get to Butte, and I'm still scared. I'm thinking, if I ever make it through this quarter, I think it was the second quarter or something. So I get there, and I signed up to fight on Friday night. I thought, what the hell? I got nothing else going. I may as well go get beat up. So I signed up at the Civic Center, and it was a smoker. And I didn't tell anybody because I was embarrassed. At school of nursing, nurse fighting, and like that's unusual, right? So this little nurse from Saco, somewhere up on the Highline, she found out I was going to fight. So she started taking bets. And I thought, oh no, now she's making money off me getting beat up. And then, let me tell you, you're in the right town when your nursing instructors come to your fights. So, Mrs. Bradley, Mrs. Ryan, they all came to the fights. So I survived nursing to that point anyway. All right. Oh no, that was Butte. All right, so then I ended up in Alaska with public health. Believe it or not, the story's about another guy, the one I'm going to read. I'm getting up to that, okay? So I get up to Anchorage, and I like public health. No money involved, we don't charge anything, so you get to public health in Anchorage. I thought it'd be a little tiny hospital. 180 beds, mostly Eskimos, Indians, And Eskimos are like Italians, you know, they want to feed you. But I grew up in New York with Italians, and we ate like meatballs. Well, the Eskimos eat like muktuk or guduk, and you know, you got to eat it. You're there, half a whale shows up, you know, but it worked out good. But I mean, guduk is just Crisco with blueberries and some like linoleum, but it's called sailor crackers. What's that lady from Alaska, the gold mine? Sailor crackers is what they are. But those Eskimos are a lot of fun. And they have a good time, and they live like the Irish do. What do we say? Live every day like it's your last, and one day you'll be right. So, I'm in this big, giant hospital, all these native people, not much paperwork, no money involved. They don't sell anything at these hospitals, everybody takes care. But the Eskimos are real social, and they got a lot of different Indians up there. They're not quite as social as the Eskimos, but they're up there. So my first week on the floor, I'm supposed to keep track of a bunch of these Eskimos. Well, the names all sound alike. Tukaluf, Tukaruk, Tukyab, Karara. A lot of A's and O's and E's. But anyway, and once in a while you get them mixed up. But especially at medicine time when they're sleeping, sitting on the wrong bed, that doesn't help. But I had this one guy, Kelly, I'll never forget. And I'm just hitting on the high points of 40 years. So Kelly, he comes back from Vietnam, he's celebrating in Denver, I don't know, he fell in front of a train, anyway, he got his legs cut off. So I got him up there and he's arrived. Irish name, I said, where'd you get the Irish name? He said, I don't know, it must have been an Irish whaling ship. Well, I never heard of that. But he was from Hooper Bay, good guy. But he would never be there for his IV meds, and I had to go look for him. So the first day I hit his wheelchair, then he was gone. Then I took his legs, he had 2 wooden legs, I hid them. 10 o'clock at night, I still can't find him. How did this guy disappear with no legs, no wheelchair, no nothing? So then I find him on the 5th floor. He had a girlfriend from Hooper Bay that also had a wheelchair, and she came down and got him, I guess. Anyway, that was Anchorage. Oh no, there was one more in Anchorage. Just to show you how at ease it is with public health as opposed to these other institutions. I had this little Eskimo lady that would fold laundry, real nice lady, but one day she went in the wrong room and somehow she went out the window. She ended up in the dumpster, and it was 3 stories down. Luckily there was sheetrocking up above, so when it broke her fall, and when she came back she was dusty, and one shoulder looked a little bit out. But anyway, the Hawaiian, the charge nurse was like, she goes, what happened? I said, I don't know, she was trying to fly and something didn't go good. Anyway, those Eskimos are in astral travel too. That's something they don't mention when you're there. But anyway, so they said, okay, now take her down to X-ray. And so I did. And things looked okay. Pinky says, I said, shouldn't I fill out some forms? No, don't do that. You start the paperwork in the government, we're done. So anyway, I straightened her out a little bit and then locked the room where she went out the window and got her folding laundry and everything was fine. I don't even know if she, anyway. So that's Anchorage. Okay, we move on. But you had to work a year in Anchorage in the city to go to the bush. And all I wanted to do was go somewhere where it was quiet. I grew up in an apartment in Brooklyn with 3 sisters, so I'd go anywhere. Beirut, I don't care where it is. I would hide out in the storm drain. I'm not kidding. So, anyway, so I wanted to go to the bush. Well, bush nursing, that's a whole nother thing, because you're way out, public health hospitals, little tiny hospitals. We had 28 villages related to our little hospital, and we had radio call and all this, but you had to do what you had to do. And I don't know if you know it, but if you know any doctors, they spend a lot of time in school, and when they get out, they're really klutzy. So they want to fly, they want to run a dog team, but they're always getting hurt. So I ended up sewing up a lot of docs. Actually, one of them I just was his best man at Big Sky last week, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. Anyway, I sewed him up quite a few times. He's finally learning how to land and all that other stuff. Okay. But anyway, the bush nursing. So I'm there, and I'm running this little hospital, and this kid comes in, middle of the night. It always happens in the middle of the night. He's like, my brother just shot me. I'm like, really? And he turns around and he shows me, and I said, how many times did he shoot you? And he said, once. I said, okay, good, you'll be all right. There's 2 holes. So, you know, going with the basics. I think it came out. It must have went in and came out. And then his brother came. I said, how many times did you shoot your brother? He said, just once. I only had 1 bullet. I said, oh, good, you guys are okay. You're good to go. Right. Well, in a regular hospital, you can't do that. You got to fill out all this paperwork. But true story. All right, so they do the Bush Hospital thing. I'm getting to the story here. Okay. I'm getting to the real story. Luckily, it's short. How am I doing, Tony? Tony said she had a hook for me. Then, okay, so Mr. Reagan comes in, he closes all the hospital, puts us all out of work up there, which is okay. And then I go to Anchorage, no, to Homer. You ever heard of Homer? Yeah. Oh yeah, if it's on, it's like Bozeman. You get on the outside magazine, you're done. Okay? So all of a sudden they got latte shops, yoga. I never heard of yoga. I thought they were talking about yogurt. I thought, wow, they're all eating yogurt all the time. They're going to yoga. I didn't know that. I've been in the bush for 10 years, right? And then they wear the spandex. I call it the smoking spandex. But Homer's an interesting place. Oh, I better watch it. See if I recognize anything. I've been there 20 years. But the women do all the work in Homer, just so you know. The rest of Alaska is a little bit more balanced, right? But if you've ever been to Homer, the women do all the work. And the guys, they smoke a lot of weed's legal, so they watch the glaciers and they watch the tide come in. But, so I hired a bunch of women to build this hangar, right? And the guys would come by, and the guys show up to pick up the checks for the wives at the hospital. We call them Homer go-getters. They take them to work in the morning, go get her at 5. That's Homer. And if you ever watch this Kilcher show with Jules' family, Otto, the whole gang, right? What's it called? The Wilderness Family or something like that? Yeah, I see them at Starbucks every day. But anyways, yeah, I call them the Von Trapps on acid. Are there any Swiss people? They're unbelievable. But they come in like I took care of the dad when he was sick, their grandfather and all that. If they're singing, they're all right. Otherwise, they're always fighting. So I keep them singing. And now they got a show and they're doing good. They're having a good time. All right, that's enough of that. So anyway, I thought I'll last a couple of weeks in Homer. They charge you for a little paper hat. This is in the hospital. Paper shoes, they charge you for everything. I'm not used to that. I said, I can't do that. I'm not charging somebody for a Jiffy Pop hat, and paper shoes. I can't do it. And so they said, you got to. This is business. This is what you got to do. I said, you charge them $1,000 for a room with 4 people in the bathroom sharing with the other room. This is bad news, you know. Anyway, I thought I'd last a couple of weeks. They said, wait till the surgeon comes back. He's a nut job. He's a gold miner. When gold's up, gallbladders are down. When he gets back, gold drops, then gallbladders go up. Anyway, he showed up, and it's ironic, but he's married to a woman from Three Forks, Dr. Sayer, and he is wild. So, okay, everybody's over 50, right, or at least enough. You'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want to lose anybody on this one. So, in the bush, you got by with real basic stuff, like a rod this big. If things were going bad on the south side, you use this rod you heat up in the water or whatever, and then you look with a light. Well, when you get to civilization, they got these big long things with a light on the end, about 8 feet long, and you know, it's what do they call them? Coloscopes, that's what it is. Anyway, and they do everything. They got cameras and all this stuff. So Sayer's like, you got to help me, I want to train you. And I'm looking going, what the, I've never seen anything like it. He's showing me what you do with this. Well, anyway, the first patient we got a TV screen, so you feel like you're gold mining in a spelunker, in a cave. And I'm like, whoa, this is scary. And then he goes in there and hits with the snares the little thing, and then hooks, and then hits it with some juice. Well, I guess I didn't do enough of a pre-op. But anyway, the guy lifted it. Anyway, it was dark, and then there was smoke and a blue flame because of the cauterizing thing. And I had locked the brakes on the gurney, so you know what happened anyway. You got a $10,000 scope. You got it stretching out, and I'm trying to get the gurney. Luckily, the door was open. Anyway, and if you've ever had one of these, they give you a Versed, and it's good for short-term memory loss. And I wish I had taken some that day, but I gave it to the patient. It's good stuff. It's really good. So I went out to tell the nurse. I said to the nurse, you see my patient? And she's like, why? I said, I don't know. I saw blue flame and smoke. We lost the patient. Sayer wants his scope. I'm trying to liven it up. This is kind of a rap-type little hospital, right? Me and Sayer are having a good time. But anyway, I get back there and we get him straightened out. So then I go, Doc, I got trouble with this airplane engine. Can I borrow that scope? Because I need to go up this oil line and look for this thing. And he's like, really? You're going to use my scope? Use the bad one. So anyway, the guy let me use a coloscope to go check on my airplane. And that worked out good. How am I doing? I better read this story. But anyway, Homer, Doc Sayer's still there if you go there. And he ends up, you get the scope. For $300, he'll let you use the one I used on the airplane. And it's already lubed when on the lube. When this came up there, they were like, we don't know what's wrong with this one. I'm thinking, I put Slick 50, WD-40, all that stuff in there. I said, I didn't admit to any of that. But Sayer's a good guy. He's a crazy man. He's out gold mining right now. Oh, do I still have time to read the story? Yeah. I do? Okay.
Absolutely.
Luckily, this is the last one, right? This is the last Chautauqua. Okay, in the wrong book. Okay, Dr. Bill. Oh, here it is, 105, sorry. Okay, here's the 29. Luckily, it's only 2 pages. I get so bored reading my own damn stories, and I read them. Okay, I just saw it. Dr. Bill, 105. So anyway, if you go to Homer, what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Once you're on Outside Magazine, you're done. And that's kind of like Bozeman, you know, for 10, 25 coffee shops. They take out the saddle shops, anything, the car parts, all that's got to go. Because we need lattes and yoga. Dr. Bill. Luckily, it's like 2 pages. And this is the guy that just got married at Big Sky a couple weeks ago. Late one afternoon, Dr. Bill putted overhead in his newly purchased yellow and blue little T-craft float plane. He rocked the wings when he saw us cutting fish at the tables on the beach below. At 8 p.m., the late sun was shining from the west through the thick cottonwoods. Alex, Sean, and I sat drinking tea at the long table in the front window. Dogs began barking. I thought there must be a bear heading for the fish rack. Then a person appeared, running up the short trail in a flurry of motion. It was Bill's wife, Margaret. She was waving her arms wildly, swatting at a thick cloud of mosquitoes. I met her at the door. She was cussing a streak in her thick Irish brogue. She looked haggard, and while she tried to catch her breath, I asked if she'd been in the plane with Bill earlier. She nodded. Envisioning the worst, we all peered out to the river, making sure there were no plane pieces floating by. Margaret was excited. She barely made sense, but it seemed she was fine, just a bit ticked off. She slowed down. Yeah, Bill couldn't get the bird off the water. He was so embarrassed we tried and tried. The plane would roar, then the nose up and drag the tail in the water. We tried for miles. Margaret went on to explain how they taxied 6 miles downriver, hoping the current and a breeze would help pick the plane up. But the evening was calm, and the only way Bill had gotten the plane off to take off earlier, in front of the village of Tanana, was a stiff afternoon breeze. As they drifted into the curve just above Tanana, Margaret told Bill to taxi ashore. Here she climbed down on the float, and then after the propeller stopped, leaped to shore. She then shoved the T-craft back into the current. She wanted Bill to go ahead and visit friends at the fish camp, Stanley, Charlie, Steve, knowing he only had 2 days off from the clinic. She also hoped to save him from the embarrassment of taxiing back to town. My house was just above the village and her first stop. Margaret was awfully good-hearted. She explained the only thing she would have done differently would have been to let Bill taxi closer to town, and she would have brought more bug dope. Oh well, she added, he's so tickled with his new airplane. Now if he could just learn to take off with the 2 of us. Anyway, that's